Hey, this is Frank Martin, and you're listening to The Nerd Byword.
Ladies and gentle nerds, welcome back to a new episode of the Nerd Byword podcast, where the two biggest nerds in the world, yes, I said it, the biggest nerds, get together and talk all things nerdy. I'm Dave, I'm here with my co-host Kris, and today we have a special episode. We are going to have a sit-down interview with writer Frank Martin about his comic book two-parter, Polar Paradox, a sci-fi comic that will hit Kickstarter on January 12th. But first, let's go ahead and check out some nerd news. Kris, what are you bringing to us this week?
So rumors are swirling that the young Avenger Patriot will soon be making his on-screen debut in the upcoming series Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Murphy's Multiverse reported that actor Elijah Anderson will portray the hero, whose alter ego is Eli Bradley. So that could be a little bit confusing. Elijah Anderson, Eli Bradley. Elijah Anderson is the actor. Eli Bradley is the character, and is even listed on the IMDb page of the show as such. Quick backstory for those of you who may have never heard of Patriot before. Eli Bradley is the grandson of Josiah Bradley, who was the Captain America before Steve Rogers. Eli was recruited by Iron Lad to form the Young Avengers in an attempt to take down Kang the Conqueror. Interesting note, whose MCU portrayal by Jonathan Majors was confirmed in last month's Disney Investors Day presentation. To simulate the power set of Captain America, Patriot injected himself with mutant growth hormone. He was later injured in battle, however, and received a blood transfusion from his grandfather Josiah, which granted him permanent superpowers. Now, Carl Lumbly was previously cast in Falcon and the Winter Soldier and has been rumored to be fulfilling the role of Josiah Bradley. It was noted in the article that IMDb pages can be edited, and these are the very earliest rumblings of rumors. But when you add this to other confirmed castings, like Haley Steinfeld as Kate Bishop, Catherine Newton as Cassie Lang, who takes the suit and becomes Stature in the comics, and rumors that Wiccan and Speed, the children of Wanda and Vision, themselves superpowered individuals, will debut in WandaVision, all signs are pointing towards an eventual Young Avenger storyline coming to the MCU. And I think this is pretty exciting stuff. It's a much-needed injection of youth in the hero lineup, and it's a definitive turning of the page and something new in the MCU. Dave, what do you think?
I knew little to nothing about this character, for one. I've never actually read Young Avengers. So after some research, I learned basically what you just told our listeners. The whole connection to Josiah Bradley, who I was at least somewhat familiar with. And this idea of a Captain America that was sort of prior to Steve Rogers. Now, this sounds fascinating. And I'm really interested to see how they would integrate this backstory into the MCU. They made a big point in the MCU of killing off the only guy who knew how to make the super soldier serum right after Steve Rogers received it. So I don't know if there's going to be some retroactive continuity or how exactly they're going to make this work, but I'm definitely intrigued. And I'm really intrigued about a young superhero team coming together in the MCU. I'm a big fan of stuff like Young Justice and Teen Titans, and generally just young heroes working together. And so seeing that in the MCU, I think, would be a real treat. So in short, I'm looking forward to it, and I'm very curious about the Patriot character. I think it's time for me to pick up some Young Avengers.
Yeah, I think I had only read a couple of issues that he was involved in Marvel's original Civil War. So that was probably the only exposure I'd had to him. So next to nothing. And I needed to do this deep dive, to familiarize myself as well. But I'm very, very intrigued, and similar in what we talked about last episode with Guardians of the Galaxy being new characters to learn in uncharted territory. That's something fun and something to embrace. And I'm all excited about Kate Bishop and Haley Steinfeld taking that role on. So if they team up, it just seems like a natural development here, and it's super, super exciting. Now, Dave, you are traveling to the realm of Doctor Who. What do you have for us today?
So I've been a huge Doctor Who fan for years, and currently we have actress Jodie Whittaker playing the Doctor. And now rumor has it that Jodie Whittaker is planning on ending her tenure as the Time Lord after the next season, which is currently filming. The majority of her predecessors seem to have left after 3 seasons, so this would be following in that tradition. But it's all rumor right now. The report came from the British tabloid The Mirror. It may or may not be accurate. Speculation about Doctor Who is almost a national pastime in Britain, particularly among tabloids. Whittaker's tenure so far has been kind of divisive in the fandom, which is, I think, really regrettable. You know, as the first female incarnation of the Doctor, who famously can regenerate his body and basically become almost an entirely new person, she has attracted the ire of this vocal anti-diversity crowd online. More interestingly to me, some of this ire is directed at Chris Chibnall, who took over as showrunner at the same time as Whittaker's tenure began. And he brought a very different style and a very different sensibility to the show. He is rumored to stick around and would be introducing a new actor in the role of the Doctor. I'm going to be honest here. I really enjoy Whittaker's portrayal of the Doctor. It is reminiscent of some of my favorite incarnations, particularly David Tennant's. I will also admit that it was somewhat easy to fall off the wagon under Chibnall's tenure as a showrunner. Doctor Who, at its best, to me is always big and kind of bonkers, too ambitious for its limited budget and filled with great ideas and questionable special effects. And the current incarnation of the show is not nearly as bonkers or big, although it is admittedly shot very well and has a great visual quality. In short, I'm wondering if a mix-up behind the scenes wouldn't benefit the show more than a change-up in actor. I feel like we've not even seen what Whittaker can really bring to the role of the Doctor yet. I don't think she's had an opportunity to reach her full potential in that role. And I'd love for her to stick around longer and get more riveting material for her to work with. Chris, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I've been teetering on the edge of a Doctor Who deep dive, but I haven't taken the leap yet. I do remember all the noise that was happening around Jodie Whittaker's casting from a few years back. But she, and I'm glad to hear your thoughts on the matter. But from what I've heard from my friends who are Doctor Who fans, she seems to be pretty well received from what I've heard. I'm really interested to see where they go with the next casting, if this is indeed true. The report that I read, it says that like she wanted to honor that tradition and that it was her stepping away because she wanted to, 3 years like everybody else had done. So if they are, going to recast, my fingers are crossed personally for Chiwetel Ejiofor. I think he's just incredible in the work I've seen him in, particularly in Doctor Strange and 12 Years a Slave. So if they do recast, that's the person, even as, someone who hasn't watched it yet, but plans to, that's the one that I'm hoping for.
Yeah, that's a really interesting choice. I really like that. Yeah, Doctor Who is just, it's a perennial favorite, and I would totally recommend you dive in. I think at some point you and I need to sit down and talk about what the best jumping on points would be, considering how very old this show is. I mean, I don't think going back all the way to 1963 would be the best way to go. All right, that's it for the Nerd News segment for this week. Please stick around as we sit down with Frank Martin and talk Polar Paradox, his new sci-fi comic hitting Kickstarter on January 12th.
Welcome back, nerds. We are here for our Byword Big Talk with comic book writer Frank Martin. We're here to talk about his newest project, The Polar Paradox. Frank, thanks so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you for having me on and reading the book and agreeing to chat about it.
So we always like to start our interviews with what our guest's nerd origin story is. That's what we started our podcast with, how we both became nerds. So how did you get started in the nerd world, and what set you on the path towards becoming a comic book writer?
Oh, I don't know. It was just it was one of those things where your earliest memory is just watching the golden age of kind of superhero animation. Back when I was a kid, they had Batman animated adventures. They had the Spider-Man 90 series, X-Men the animated series. I mean, it was really. I mean, 90s comic books was a whole different thing, but 90s back then was all cartoons, and you just kind of got sucked into it, and the video games, and then eventually you migrated over to the comics. But it was just From there, I was kind of the casual comic book reader. Whenever I got into the comic book store, not the comic book store, but the bookstore, and they would have the spinner racks with a couple single issues, and I would grab them every once in a while. And it wasn't until Marvel's the whole Ultimate Universe big gimmick that I got sucked into like a black hole. That's what really hit me like a drug addict, and I kept going back every week, having to get my pull list and all that stuff. So yeah, it kind of took off from there.
Yeah, it's interesting you say, animation and then, sort of the long way around the comic books. That was very much my path as well. And I know Kris is sort of a late comer, actually, to the comic books themselves. He's sort of a nerd late bloomer. But the Ultimate line was really influential for me as well. Ultimate Spider-Man and to some extent Ultimate Fantastic Four were really, seminal books as far as drawing me into those characters and making me, switch over later on to the main continuity and really getting into the 616 stuff on Marvel's side.
It gets very convoluted, the 616 stuff, because there's so much history, there's so much canon there. It felt like just that refresh, that restart, getting stuff that was on the ground floor. Really, it was just that age, that time. They really made it fresh and they made it interesting and accessible, and they just hooked you. It was good. It was good bait.
Yeah, absolutely. So, who would you say are your biggest influences as a creator?
Well, during that definitely Ultimate time, all those creators that were really thriving. Brian Michael Bendis, Mark Millar. They really took my storytelling as far as what can happen in the realm of comics to the next level. And then as I expanded, I got into the legends of Neil Gaiman and Alan Moore and those cats. So yeah, there were definitely a whole bunch of different writers that have really stuck with me that I love reading their work.
So before we dive into, pun intended, the Polar Paradox, what other types of books or written pieces have you worked on previously?
So my main series that I worked on for a couple years was called Modern Testament. It was an urban fantasy kind of anthology series that I produced, where I wrote a whole bunch of different short stories that would pretty much I would focus on various biblical beings, angels, demons, horsemen of the apocalypse, and I would kind of write short stories about them and then hire different artists to bring them to life. And yeah, the final volume that eventually came out was the collected edition, and it was like 160 pages of all these shorts that I've been working on for years. And that's that was probably the biggest series I put out to date. But also more recently, I just funded this past October a book called The Macabre Motel, which was like a kind of a Twilight Zone horror one shot that got a good response and people enjoyed. So it's been an interesting transition, kind of bouncing back and forth between all these different genres.
So where did that's a really fascinating, kind of genre to tackle. Like, where did that spawn from?
It just spawned from, going back to my kind of nerd origin stories. As I reflect on my influences as a writer, stuff like I always come back to Are You Afraid of the Dark? The horror,
oh yeah,
kind of the kids horror anthology show from Nickelodeon back in the day. And I recently got into it with my kids, where I bought like season 1 and 2 on DVD, and we kind of ran through them both. And I'm watching this, and it jumps around. That's exactly what it does. It's like some shows are fantasy, some are horror, some are supernatural. And I'm like, this is my writing style. It really encompasses jumping back and forth and tackling everything. And that's how I wanted to approach this kind of short story, this Macabre Motel, of this weird where you follow this character and he's taking you on this weird journey of going to this bizarre motel, and it's left on kind of like a surreal cliffhanger. It was really fun to kind of craft a story that it just embraces the weird and the surreal.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So to get around to the polar paradox, where did the idea for that come from? You referenced, the old school team ups like the Fantastic Four and Lost in Space, but there also seems to be some healthy Jules Verne vibes going on here as well. What are sort of the inspirations behind the polar paradox?
So the polar paradox, even before I came up with the story and the characters, what hooked me first was the setting, where it was going to take place. And the initial inspiration, the spark that drove this story forward was I'm a big National Geographic reader. I read it religiously. I have a subscription. I get it every single month. And a couple years ago, there was a story that was about essentially what this book is about. It was about a couple scientists that dug a hole in the Antarctic sea ice, and they dove into this sea that no person has ever been to before. Nobody's ever visited it, nobody's ever documented it, and they took a bunch of pictures. And it was an alien world. These creatures evolved on different paths that no other creatures evolved into. And I said, this is just a prime sci-fi story setting. And from there, I just kind of wanted to tell the story and deal with action and adventure, just like something with Jules Verne. So it was really, when people think of sci-fi, they kind of think of some big science fiction kind of tale of artificial intelligence or spaceships. And this is really grounded sci-fi. It really started with a scientific story that it's not far future, but it's near future. I just bump it up just a little bit into the fiction realm, but it's really grounded into a real setting.
That's really fascinating. I'm a big geek when it comes to like documentaries like that, like Planet Earth or National Geographic, and just seeing like how we've been on this planet for thousands of years, and there's still yet every time you watch like one of those shows, it's like this has never been seen before, never been captured. Like how in the world, and we always look to the stars and we look to outer space for something, and like you said, it's right here on the planet that we inhabit.
Yeah, I mean, you see it time and time again. Hollywood keeps coming back to underwater settings. I just watched, kind of ironically with my wife, the movie Underwater with, what's her name, Kristen Stewart, and they have an underwater base and they're doing mining, and they kind of unravel some monster that's living down there. And then there's a whole bunch of movies like that, The Abyss and Sphere. It's a great setting because it's like space in that it's a frontier that we're not used to. We're out of our element, but at the same token, it's in our backyard. This is our planet. We're not traveling light years away, and it's right here, and we can explore it, and we really have no idea what's down there.
So the art in this book is one of the things that really struck me by Antonio Mastria, particularly those underwater scenes. I just think it's stunning. Would you tell us a little bit about the working relationship that the two of you have, and what does that look like? The back and the forth, the collaboration there.
Yeah, this was an interesting collaboration because this wasn't a story that I developed on my own, and I went out and I kind of tried to put a team together to make. I met Antonio at a local convention, and we talked about different ideas, and this was a kernel of an idea that I had, and he said, yeah, I dig it, kind of, let's do it. And he really threw a whole bunch of designs at me for the submarine and the creatures, and definitely the suits, the suits that they wear, because it's a futuristic suit, it's high tech, it's new for them, but at the same time we wanted to look like something familiar, something that we're used to. There were versions of the suits where they had a kind of a rebreather on, like a scuba gear, but we wanted to see their face, we wanted to see their expression. So it was cool going back and forth and really hammering out all these design details. So it was a great working relationship that I have with them.
Yeah, this issue also doesn't pull any punches as far as, the stakes for a first issue. What's the decision process on balancing that aspect and maintaining suspense, but at the same time, saving something for the next issue? Because this for a first issue was absolutely jam-packed.
Yeah, I didn't waste too much time, getting to know these characters, getting to know the situation. There's a couple pages of just setup, just letting us know why these people are going into the water. But for the most part, this is a two-part story, a two-part arc, and I kind of divide it in half. It's the polar paradox. So the first half, this issue, it's all about the polar, it's all about the adventure. It's all about going to that alien world and exploring it and facing the danger. And then eventually we'll slow down with the second issue a little bit and deal with the paradox side of things, because I really just didn't want to embrace the adventure of going down there. I also want to embrace the mystery of it too, because we have no idea what's down there. I wanted to really throw in the sci-fi aspect of things and play around with the idea of a mystery in the South Pole, in this place that, again, is on our planet that nobody's ever been to before. So in the second issue, we really delve more into story and more into character, but still it's taking place in this treacherous terrain, this treacherous setting that is really cool to play around with.
Now, these characters seem like familiar. Like, I can't quite put my finger on it. Are they particularly based on any iteration of a fictional character that you've seen previously, or anyone in real life, or do you have any inspiration on the characters, like, specifically?
Not necessarily. I mean, I played around with the archetypes a little bit. We got 3 characters. I got kind of the leader, kind of Leonardo of the group. Then I got kind of the wise ass, kind of the slacker, who's kind of a mix up of the Donatello, Raphael kind of character. And then I have the sole woman in the group. She's kind of the heart of the team, the one that wants to keep them all together, the Donatello. So I just kind of played around with the archetypes, and that's probably why it feels so familiar. I wasn't gonna. There's a reason that these things work when you have team up books about you want to have each character take on a specific role, and I didn't really want to mess with that, because this isn't, at the end of the day, this isn't a book solely about these characters' journeys and these characters, at least internal journeys. It's all about the struggle externally. So I wanted to really just do something that was familiar, and then throw them into a completely chaotic setting.
Well, you're speaking my language. You're speaking to my TMNT soul. So now everything makes sense.
So this project is on Kickstarter. Tell us a little bit about the Kickstarter project. What are the specifics there? Dates, rewards, what are the reward tiers, that sort of stuff?
So the campaign, I should say, is going to run from January 12th to February 2nd. This is just for issue 1, part 1 of the 2-part story. We're going to have a variant cover that's available. Also, Kickstarter does an event every January or so called Make 100, where they kind of push creators to create an item that's limited to 100 backers. And so I like to take advantage of it whenever I launch in January. So I'm going to be putting out a face mask, kind of embracing the pandemic a little bit. And I'm going to take one of those designs that Antonio had for the masks with a rebreather, and I kind of made it as a template for the mask that backers can grab, so they're going to have their own little scuba gear looking face mask as part of the campaign. Which it's something unique, it's something new, it's something fun, and I like to tailor it a little bit so that it's just not like a sticker or a button. It's something that can kind of is unique to this particular story.
I'll talk about embracing the times that we live in and evolving. So crowdfunding and self-publishing is seemingly the way to go for indie creators, and even some big names with their creator-owned pieces as well. And we've had several folks on that are either doing Kickstarter or Indiegogo and similar sites. But with a market that is becoming quickly flooded, how do you make your project stand out?
Oh, I mean, that's the kind of the $1 million question, right? How do we grab people's interests? I don't think that there's any secret to it. It's just a matter of being passionate about the story that you're telling, trying to tell the best story that you can, and it's about eyeballs. Just getting in front of as many people as you can. I don't want to say by any means necessary, because you definitely want to rein it in a bit, but it's just the amount of putting the story that you have in front of the people that are going to dig it. It doesn't make sense to spend all this advertising money on your comic book, just shotgunning every single comic fan that's out there, because not everybody's going to like everything. So it's just a matter of kind of zeroing and honing in on the right type of comic fan that's gonna dig your work. Because if if you find somebody that connects with it and they connect with it hard, they might connect with you on the next go around when it's something a little bit out of their wheelhouse. So it's a long game.
See, that's really interesting. We've been kind of talking a lot about, Kickstarter funding, Indiegogo funding, and that whole system. And we both, Kris and I, have noted several times that it seems like a lot of, big name pros that have, had significant mainstream success have also started turning to Kickstarter and crowdfunding as a way to get some of their own creator-owned stuff out there. Do you find that that's the right way to go for them? Do you find that maybe some of these big-name creators might be stealing some of the indie creators' thunder a little bit, or is it just the more the merrier?
I mean, that's the big discussion that people are constantly having on social media, whether or not big names that can sell their books and make money in traditional ways, whether or not they belong on a platform like Kickstarter. And it's not just creators now. Boom just launched their big book with Keanu Reeves and broke the record for the most funding for a Kickstarter project. So it's kind of a big discussion, and I don't know. I'm a little bit torn on it. On the one hand, look, they see the potential in it, and they see the dollars and they want to take advantage of the platform and the launch mentality of it. And they're kind of be foolish not to take advantage of it if it's something that's available to them, because they'll essentially be leaving money on the table. But the other token is Kickstarter was made for people to kickstart projects. It was made specifically for people that need the funding to get something made. So is it really playing on the same level if you have somebody that can generate that funding regardless if they're using a platform like Kickstarter or not? I don't know. I really don't have the answer to that question. I think there's good arguments on both sides of it. At the end of the day, it's all comics. It's all good stuff. So I'll kind of leave those analytical questions to people that analyze this stuff and are a lot smarter than me when it comes to comic marketing and selling and all that. I'm just going to throw my book on there, do what I do, and hope for the best.
So issue 1 ends on quite a significant cliffhanger. When can we plan on catching issue 2?
Issue 2, I'm currently lettering it, so we're a fair ways along as far as completing it. I actually plan on launching it this year in the summer, preferably, maybe like July or August. So I know a lot of people, when they put multi-issue stories on Kickstarter, they're like, yeah, I'm going to finish the next one next year. I don't really want to do that, because that's not really how comics work. When you put out a book, you wait a month, maybe 2 months at the most to see the story continue. So I really try my best when I'm going to put a book out there that's a continuation on Kickstarter to at least get it out there as soon as I can, reasonably.
Yeah, see, that makes perfect sense. I know there's usually some frustration with Kickstarter projects that have these huge distances between issues. So I applaud the fact that you're trying to complete the story rather quickly. I think your backers are definitely going to appreciate that.
Yeah, one of the things I like to try to do is, as a general rule of thumb, is I'm more of the mindset that I use Kickstarter as more of a I'm not looking to Kickstarter to start something. I don't put a project on there unless it's at least 90% done, if not 100% done. So, as soon as the campaign ends, I place my printing order and I'm ready to ship. It's not like the campaign ends and I say, okay, great, now we got to go make the book. That's not really what I'm into. And if people do that, that's great. That works for them. But I like to make comics. I got a whole bunch of stuff that I want to do, and it really backs me up if I have to wait to fulfill one project before launching another, because I want to make sure all the backers that back a project have the book in their hands before I launch a new one. So I want to make sure that things are kind of seamless like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Talking about, getting onto other projects, are there any other projects currently in development that you can perhaps tease for our audience?
Oh yeah, definitely. So hopefully, if everything goes well, I'm planning 8 launches for 2021 and 2022 on like 5 different projects or something along those lines. So after the Polar Paradox, my next one will be in the spring, and that's for a book that's called The Last Homicide, which is kind of a old school detective noir murder mystery, about beat cops trying to just solve a crime, solve a homicide. So it's kind of a throwback, a homage to the golden age of Hollywood, books or movies, I should say, like The Maltese Falcon and Double Indemnity and stuff like that. So that should be a lot of fun.
Oh my God, that's right up my alley. I can't wait for that. So we usually end each episode with our patented nerd commendations, like they're like video games that we've been playing, comic books that we've been reading, or shows that we've been watching that may be flying under folks' radar and that we would recommend or nerd commend. So aside from working your tail off, what are some cool things that you've been, especially during quarantine, enjoying that you would share out with our audience?
As far as shows, I think my wife and I just wrapped up last night. We watched His Dark Materials on HBO. I don't know if anybody's been jumping into that, but yeah, I've always wanted like an original Final Fantasy live action series. It's just take an original Final Fantasy-ish story and turn it into a movie or a TV series. And I think that this is like as close as I'm going to get to something along those lines. It's not perfect, but it definitely has all those elements of a Final Fantasy story. It's a mixture of science and magic and different characters weaving in different journeys and stories. So it's kind of a cool saga.
Yeah, I definitely, it's a fascinating kind of premise, and that's just something that's definitely been on my to watch list.
Yeah, the season 2 finale I thought was a little bit of a letdown. They built it up a lot. But I think they're coming back for season 3. I think they're going to wrap up the show in season 3. It's not going to go on too long, but it's cool. It's fun fantasy. I would say I saw the movie The Golden Compass, which was the movie adaptation, which I don't think did too well because they didn't really continue it. But yeah, definitely this is a little bit of a darker tone, and it's fun.
So one of the things about our podcast is that we kind of started it on the premise that we're basically like the old PC and Mac commercials. Hi, I'm a Mac. Hi, I'm a PC. So in essence, I'm the DC and Kris here is the Marvel. So I'm very curious as far as mainstream comics go. DC or Marvel?
I would say Marvel. I'm a Marvel boy. I started Marvel. I got sucked into DC's New 52. That was kind of when I decided to give DC a shot, and I've kind of been reading both ever since. So I think I'm Marvel at heart. I like Marvel a little bit more, but I think at the end of the day they're all good stuff. They're superheroes. They're doing their thing. They're timeless characters that have been around forever. So I just enjoy them all.
Do you have anything on your pull list or books that you're reading pretty regularly?
I think right now there are books that I will always be pulling, regardless if I think that I'm enjoying them or not. Like Amazing Spider-Man, I kind of would always be reading Amazing Spider-Man. Flash, I would always be reading Flash. I've been reading Batman Beyond, Dan Jurgens' run. I think it just wrapped up with 50. I'm not really entirely sure. But I loved Batman Beyond, the show, when it came out. So whenever they started putting out a Batman Beyond book, I'm like, I got to get on that. So that's I've been reading that for the whole run. And you know what? I actually thought that he didn't write the last issue. To be honest with you, I don't know if you guys have been reading it, but it's like I've been reading 49 issues from the guy, and then they put out 50, and it just so happens to wrap up the series. And I'm like, it just doesn't seem like he wrote it. It's like they decided, yeah, we're going to end the series and we're just going to make you end it the way we want you to, It was a little bit, I felt a little editorial in there, but yeah, that's definitely been a fun book too.
Have you been reading ASM The Last Remains arc right now? Are you caught up on that?
I am caught up on that.
So what are your thoughts on that? I'm dying to talk to somebody about it.
Okay. I'm not really. I think Spencer's Hunted arc with Craven. Those were the two that he was building up to.
Yeah.
The Craven arc they were building up to, the big Craven story, and then this one with Kindred. I thought Hunted was much better. I thought it was more engaging. This one, I think it's kind of weird with all of the other spider people being possessed by demons. I'm like, it's not really going anywhere for me,
Yeah, those support issues really don't add anything to the main story, and I'm ready for just like the next issue, the main title to come out, because like the backup issues just seem like they're kind of plugging the other Spider people. Uh,
Even the main issues weren't. It doesn't seem like much is happening. It seems like that
yeah,
there's some
yeah,
like there's some climax that they're getting to.
yeah. Like there's one issue left, and like we still don't know like so much.
It was just I think the last issue was pretty much Spider-Man just getting beat up the entire issue.
Yeah,
Like it wasn't really anything. It was just like, yeah, you suck. You let everybody die, and let me punch you some more. It was that for 20 pages. No, it was. I don't feel like much is really happening, and it's been a whole lot of build up of him like stalking him in his dreams. I'm gonna get you, and I'm like, I'm not really.
it's
This is
it's really interesting. The entire Spencer run has been fascinating for me because I've read every issue, and it's been like 2.5 years. And my overarching kind of thought process is he's just showing off like his Spidey historian. Like he's like, remember this obscure villain? I'm gonna bring them back. Remember Gog when he killed him? Actually, he's still alive, and I'm gonna bring him back. Every obscure, amazing Spider-Man fact through 60 years of history, he's like trying to show off, and sometimes it works, and sometimes not so much.
it's funny you say that because there was one issue where Peter Parker's sister was like a supporting character, and I read that, and I'm like, wait a second. I've read every single Amazing Spider-Man issue for the last 20 years. Peter Parker has a sister? Like, I had no idea that he that he had a sister that was like some super spy.
Yeah, it's the family business graphic novel, I think, and then Chip Zdarsky did some work with that in his spectacular run as well.
So yeah, it wasn't in the main
No,
Amazing Spider-Man. I kind of felt like that was an important detail that should have been in the main book.
or at least the footnotes that we got back in the day.
Yeah, I was just like, that's kind of bizarre that he's had this sister the entire time, and I've been a huge Spider-Man fan, and I had no idea. It was just so it's kind of funny that you say he's just kind of throwing his Spider-Man knowledge weight around.
Yeah, as of the time that we're recording this, they've just also revealed the new Spider-Man suit that he's going to be wearing in the comics for a while. One of those, no doubt, temporary changes. I was wondering, have you had a chance to take a gander at that?
Well, yeah, if you were on social media at any point in the last 12 hours, I don't think it would be possible to miss it. So, yeah, I saw it. I think it's a little bit of a mashup between the big time suit and the future Foundation suit. You know, uh, my thoughts is it's just another suit. It's going to last, I don't know, maybe like 5 issues or something, and then he's going to go back to his other suit. I feel like the suits, they definitely have something to do with video games and downloadable content and just adding more stuff that they could do. I don't know why I feel like that, but it's just Spider-Man has so many suits that it's a little bit ridiculous, and I'm kind of numb to it at this point. So I don't really think it's that big of a deal.
I feel like maybe it's time. Maybe it's time to bring back the amazing Bagman suit. I really like that whole paper bag look for him. Maybe it's time for that as some DLC.
I was a big fan of. I don't know. You were talking about Chip Zdarsky. I think he wrote Spider-Man. What was it called? True Life or Real Life?
Life story.
Life Story. That was a great.
Yeah.
That was a great series.
I loved it so much.
So yeah, I mean, every once in a while, Marvel definitely puts something out there that flies under the radar. I don't think too many people talked about it, but I thought that was really well done. It was really cool. It was something new, something interesting, and Spider-Man had a bunch of suits in that too that were kind of new and original that you don't see too often.
I think the best thing I saw on social media today about the new suit was, well, Pete is a Mets fan.
So, where can our audience members go to support the Polar Paradox and you as well? Social media, Kickstarter, website. Where can they find you and more about your work?
So, Polar Paradox, as I said before, will be on Kickstarter from January 12th to the 2nd. You could find me on the internet at real easy, Frank the Writer. So frankthewriter.com is my website. And also all my social media handles, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, at Frank the Writer. And I'll be blasting about the campaign as long as it's live throughout all those platforms. So at Frank the Writer, definitely the easiest way to find me.
Ladies and gentle nerds, Frank Martin, the Polar Bear Talks. Be sure to head to Kickstarter January the 12th and support this project. Frank, thank you so much for your time, and thanks for nerding out with us.
Oh, anytime, man. That was a lot of fun. Thank you.
And we're back. And as always, we have some new nerd commendations for you this week. Some fascinating nerdy media for you to consume. Kris, you are going in a very new direction for the Byword. What are you nerd commending this week?
Dude, so I've had like a recent development personally. So I started like actually comic book collecting. Now this is by no means like, hey, I've got slabs and I got a first appearance of this, and like not that. I'm just collecting comics that I enjoy. So for example, X-Men Red that I recommended last episode. I'm trying to find as many physical issues that I have of that. Just stuff that I like reading time and again that I could, go to my shelf and pick up. So when you're looking for physical comics that maybe not be available at your LCS, but you're not necessarily looking for the first appearance of Peter Parker, Amazing Fantasy 15, stuff that's going to break the bank. You want to look at comics, and the best place that I've found to find a lot of comics for reasonable prices is Mercari. So the Mercari app, if you want to purchase comic books, there's a wide variety of what you can find. A lot of like local comic shops are going on there to kind of try and pivot in the wake of the pandemic and everything, and try to recoup some sales. So it's a really, really interesting app that I've utilized quite a bit. You can, like, for example, search comic book lot plus the character that you're looking for. And if you're paying attention to like our Instagram feed, a lot of the comics that you're seeing on there have been purchased on there. So for example, I found an X-Men comic lot that had a lot of really awesome 90s comics, including some Age of Apocalypse issues. And I got that. It was like 25 issues for $33 plus shipping. So it was pretty incredible value. One seller that I particularly really enjoy doing business with, and I'm going to give them a shout out right now, is AC Collectibles in New York. I believe the Bronx, but AC Collectibles on Mercari. Search them up. They have thousands of ratings, very, very 5 stars overall. He offers free shipping on everything. So, I want to say like 10 comics from him. And if you message them as well, they'll like offer you discounts. Like if you buy 2 single issues, you get 1 free or something like that, where you just message them ahead of time and they'll, work like a combo deal for you. But AC Collectibles, he offers free shipping on everything, and shipping, especially with something as delicate and, as you want to keep it in mint condition as possible when you're shipping it. But, so free shipping on comic books, no matter the size of the order, is just incredible. So Mercari, if you're looking to buy some comic books that you may not be able to find at your LCS, maybe, for example, X-Men Red was, about 2 or 3 years ago, so not as easy to find. But yeah, check out Mercari.
I've never heard of this before, and I'm really curious to learn more. It's essentially like a Japanese company, I believe, that works as a platform not unlike eBay. So I've done a lot of used comic book buying in my time, obviously, especially on Amazon's marketplace and on eBay. So I'm curious, what makes this app, do you think, a better option for buying comic books than something like eBay or Amazon's marketplace?
You know what? I'm not sure what it is. It's just, like I said, I think it's a lot of, big time dealers that are getting on there and they're trying to move merchandise. I've had better luck with it than I had with, for example, Let Go, which turned into like Spot. It changed its name. It used to be Let Go. It's something else now, but, and the Facebook marketplace can be hit or miss. but Mercari is just like, especially particularly if you're looking for like like a comic book lot. Like I'm looking for particularly X-Men comics and Thor comics. Go figure. Right now, so I'll just search Thor comic book lot, and I'll find somebody that's got 12 issues for $25, or is particularly if these are not like gotta have it collector's items, nobody's gonna like be ridiculous about it. It's also a nice way to look at I'm I'm a sucker for variant covers. So even recent comics that had a lot of variant covers that maybe your LCS did not get in stock, you can look on Mercari, and I've got for particular the Thor #1 that I just recommended by Donnie Cates that has like when they have a #1 they have like 50 different variant issues. So I found like a Midtown Comics exclusive for like $6 on Mercari with free shipping. So it's just really, really fun to be able to find stuff that you can't find in your local comic book shop.
Well, definitely I'm going to have to give this a whirl and see how it does.
All right, Dave. So you've got a bit of personal news for your nerd commendation. What's going on with you?
Yeah, today I'm here to nerd commend something that qualifies as basically shameless self-promotion. And in the spirit of the term, I've decided to not feel any shame for doing this, so buckle your seatbelts. It's getting ready to be shameless. I recently launched a nerd blog, which can be found at thatnerddave.com. And I'm incredibly excited to expand my coverage of nerdy topics and build on the work that I do with you on our podcast. So That Nerd Dave, the website, features reviews of novels and comic books, commentary pieces on nerdy topics, countdown lists, interviews with nerdy creators, coverage of my video game habits, and a lot more. I've already posted all of my articles that I've written for various outlets in 2019, including my work for thenerddaily.com. My first article of 2020 is going to be a review of DC Comics' House of L Book 1, the Shadow Threat young adult graphic novel, and it should be up probably by today, actually, as well. And I have big plans moving forward for content on thatnerddave.com. My first big project is going to be a massive Tomb Raider retrospective where we'll focus on the original Lara Croft as portrayed in the comic books published by Top Cow. Tomb Raiding Thursdays are set to kick off later this week on, you guessed it, Thursdays, and I hope to slowly make my way through all the major comic book releases featuring Lara Croft from Top Cow as the year goes on. In short, I'm really firing on all nerdy cylinders right now, creating new content, and it would be an honor if our listeners would decide to grace my website with a visit. I can almost guarantee they'll find something interesting for their nerdy hearts.
Absolutely. And looking over your website, a lot of this is, I kind of liken it to basically an extension of our show, like almost like the after party, if you will. So like, for example, your interview, your written interview with James Aquilone, and the author of the Dead Jack series that we interviewed on the show is on there as well. Abby Shapiro, your interview with her on, or your piece on her from Doom Patrol. So just a lot of really cool stuff, and just a real nerd deep dive. I mean, for Pete's sake, Tomb Raiding Thursdays sounds like the nerdiest thing that I've heard in quite some time.
Yeah, and I can't wait to get started. I have the first couple of articles in the series already done. The first one is sort of an introduction to the original Lara Croft and how she differs from the current reboot version. And then, with the second article, I basically dive into her first couple of appearances in comic books in crossovers with one of my other favorite female comic book heroines, and that's, of course, Witchblade. So it's going to be quite a ride.
Well, speaking of Witchblade, I've seen quite a bit of Witchblade on Mercari, so you may want to head over there too. So Mercari and thatnerddave.com are the places you should be heading this week, man.
And although I will say I'm very interested in Macabre, I don't think they'll be able to offer me anything Witchblade related, considering I actually own the entire run of Witchblade comic books in original first print issues. So
there you go.
All right, well, that's it for another episode of the Nerd Byword podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. If you enjoy our podcast, please give us a rating or review and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform.
You can also interact with us on social media on Instagram and Twitter at Nerd Byword. You can find us individually on both of those platforms at That Nerd Dave and at That Nerd Kris, respectively. And you can also find our Facebook page at The Nerd Byword. Be sure to also, while you're on Facebook, send a friend request to Phil Russert. He is the creator of CreatorCon Q&A. Be sure to check out his show, his live show, about 2 or 3 nights a week, and he'll have big name creators on there for a live stream show, sometimes giving away really cool prizes. If Facebook's not your vibe, which we totally understand, head to YouTube for CreatorCon Q&A's page as well. And as always, we thank you so much for joining us today. Be sure to stick around next week for another really awesome interview. Stay well and stay nerdy.
The Nerd Byword is written and produced by Kris and Dave, 2 nerds with a love of all things pop culture. The podcast features music by Al Jimenez and show art by Ashery Design. Find us at nerdbyword.com and wherever podcasts are available.